Then hi, it's a pleasure to have you with us. How have you been?
Yeah, awesome, Ashu. It's going well. How are
You know,
you?
doing very well, Nathan. Doing very well. Trying to keep safe. Trying to stay as indoors as we can. I think doing some very exciting videos with professionals like yourself. And trying to sort of share knowledge with the audience, right? To create a more evolved ecosystem. I think so. Yeah, I think it's exciting, right? The last few days, few months have been very exciting in that sense.
Correct, correct. I think you have a good pipeline of speakers coming up. The last summit was very exciting. So
It was. It
looking
was.
forward for this session as well.
Absolutely. Nitin, I am particularly excited about this session. Given your background, right? You've been across some very high growth startups. You've been a very key member across, these organizations, and you built a lot of that yourself, right? And today's discussion is essentially in line with, what do you need to do, right? To create high growth teams, right? At a foundational level, this is something which is very pertinent to all the startups. In fact, all businesses, but startups more so because the performance pressure is much higher in a very limited time, right? So I am literally looking forward to this this discussion today that we have, right? But before we dive into that, why don't you take us through your journey, right? It's been an exciting one. I've known you personally, but it'll be nice to have it captured for people who are going to be watching this video as we produce it.
Okay. So, Ashu, my journey has been with a lot of twists and turns.
Sure.
Uh, and if I have to summarize my journey, it's total 16 years. But the last 10 years, I've been working in the startup ecosystem. Very fortunate actually to start my journey with Flipkart in 2012.
Okay.
And at that time, Flipkart was not even a unicorn. And I remember my dad was not very comfortable moving me from ITC, which is a very
Right.
traditional setup,
Right.
into a world which was not that popular at that time.
Right.
Correct. I think the entrepreneur breed has come in the last 5 years, I will say, in a
Yes.
very big way. But
Right.
it was a very risky profile to get into startups.
Right.
So I took that plunge. I think I was fortunate to start my journey there, and then the journey continued,
Right.
moving from Flipkart to ShopClues, which is another e-commerce company,
Sure.
and then I moved to Logistic Tech.
Right.
Uh, Revigo is leading that pack
Right.
for the part truckload and the full truckload business. And
Right.
then I wanted to try my hand with the upcoming upcoming industry, which is the IoT space.
Right.
So I worked with Hero Group as the chief operating officer, building
Right.
their consumer IoT business. And currently, I am with the education tech space,
Right.
working with the White Hat Junior and Byju's family.
Wonderful.
So it's like 5 startups in the last 10 years. What I'm passionate about is building sustainable businesses
Right.
and building winning teams.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I think one thing which is a common factor across, there are two things that are common, right? One is, of course, your role in building, sharp teams. And second, all of these companies going on to become, unicorns, right? I think which is constant, right? No, I think that's fantastic. Nathan, without further ado, I will just dive into the session today, right? I'll dive into my questions today, right? So, what, according to you, is the foundation of creating a winning team, right? Uh, what are your thoughts about it, right? It's the most important piece that any organization is going to have because there are a lot of systemic challenges that you really can't kind of try and comprehend every single time when you are sort of at it, right? The only constant that you have is the team, right? So it becomes very important that you have a very sharp combination of professionals who come from with relevant experiences and who are calibrated to sort of deal with those challenges that are going to come in, right? So what do you think is the formula to build and creating a winning team?
Uh, Ashu, this is not a straight answer. I
Right.
think there are a lot of ingredients,
Sure.
but what I have figured out, the one which has worked well is I think the team create the first set of team members
Sure.
who are there in a startup
Sure.
are connected with the vision of the company.
Right.
Okay, what is the purpose? And it has to be a purposeful vision. The more the purpose,
Right.
the more the connection, the more the energy, the more the outcome, the more the performance.
Right.
So I think the first set of people you hire is like the make or break.
Right.
Correct. So they should be ready to go through a patchy journey,
right,
with lots and lots of struggle. They should have, I think, the mettle to accept failures, learn from failures, and
right,
really moving on. So I
right,
think people who have the grit and people who are very resilient, who can pass through those rough patches,
right,
will stay for long. And once you spend those, I think, 1 or 2 years together
right.
as a team, where even the leader is trying to grow,
Mhm.
the team is also growing along.
Right.
I think that leads to like a massive 10x, 100x impact.
Right.
Versus really maybe in the journey in between, people hire a lot of senior professionals with great backgrounds.
Right.
I have a thesis that I think the first set of team members connected with the vision can build something massively valuable.
Interesting. Nathan, is it important to have an entrepreneurial mindset, right? When you're especially working and creating an environment, where you're saying, if not created, right, but you're really creating a new play, right? Is it important to have or let me put it this way, right? How important is it to have an entrepreneurial mindset, right? In the team that you're creating, right? At least the founding, the layer below the founding team, right, that you're creating. How important is it to have that element going? Because that grit, that passion, like you also highlighted, right, is very, very important in the process, right? And this is a very difficult trait to sort of find out across professionals who worked for a very long time, because you get to a certain point where you're very comfortable, right? And as comfort comes in, essentially the entrepreneurial kind of mindset takes a backseat, right? But how important is it to in the larger scheme of things, right, in trying to achieve the kind of goals that you set out? How important is entrepreneurial mindset to sort of achieve the goals that you've sort of set out?
So first of all, let's break what is entrepreneur.
Sure.
Okay, when you say you want to get those breed of people,
Sure.
I think the key there is only, I think, one thing which I always tell whenever I'm hiring or I'm talking to my team, is I think, hunger to grow.
Mhm.
Hunger to grow means you want to learn,
Sure.
you want to stretch your limits,
Right.
um, you accept any problems. You may be an ops guy, but you may be absolutely comfortable doing a sales role.
Right.
You may be like, in my journey, if you see,
Sure.
I was a sales guy, but I
Right.
led 2 finance roles.
Interesting.
So I was leading the FP&A, financial planning and analysis function in 2013 in Flipkart, when I didn't had even like any kind of background in finance.
Right.
I think we need people who are absolutely comfortable, fungible,
Right.
moving from maybe one function to another, moving from one business unit to another.
Sure.
Because Ashu, it's so dynamic.
Right.
What you plan today will be very different the next month.
Absolutely.
So first of all, you cannot have like a playbook for 2 years.
Right.
So you need people who can learn on the go. It's like changing the wheel of the car, which is running
Right.
at a speed of 80 kilometers per hour, right? You have to change the wheels because the model is evolving. Correct. So I think you need those people. It's very hard to find those people, but my suggestion will always be, spend that time which is required to hire the right set of people.
Right.
And people are available in the market. There you will find fantastic individuals who will not have the best of the backgrounds.
Right.
They may not have 15 years of experience,
Sure.
but they will have this passion and hunger.
Interesting.
Maybe with 5 years experience.
Right.
But if you really spend those first 1 to 2 years when you're building your startup,
Right.
they can become your CXOs.
Interesting. That's a very interesting point that you highlighted, Nitin. And I'm gonna come to that, towards the later half of the conversation. I'm gonna come to that, and we'll discuss more at depth that particular bit, right? But what I want to understand is, today you work with a very large team, right? This is something that we've discussed across other conversations as well, right? Now, when you're creating a very a very dynamic team, a go-getter team, right? Let me put it this way, right? To achieve those goals that you've set out, right? is it important to have, so like any cricket team, right? You cannot have every batsman to be an opener, right? Is it like that? You don't want, I mean, you want just about a few people who are going to be evangelists of growth, and then of course others will sort of follow the path, right? Or do you want, or should it be a case where you have 80-90% of your team can sort of come in and bat at any order, right? What's the ideal combination of in that sense?
There is no combination, Ashu, first of all. My learning is you may start with that the guy has a potential to do sales.
Right.
But if the guy really have the right foundation, you will find their journey will change.
Right.
Okay. So I think you never hire for like, let me have guys who are thinkers. Let me have guys who are very creative, who may fit the bill for the marketing role. Obviously, that's a starting point, Ashu.
Yeah.
But it doesn't pan out that way.
Sure.
Right. Like I'll give you an example. In one of my recent teams, there was a guy with a pure operations background.
Right.
But then we figured out with some grooming and some inputs, the guy can do a fantastic sales.
Sure.
And he can be a great hunter.
Wow.
That potential was there. So you keep exposing people to different roles. Maybe put a guy in your team who you may have like 20% probability the guy may do a good sales.
Right.
Okay. Experiment. There is no harm in experimenting. You put the guy for one month in a role.
Right.
You may actually figure out that he may do that fantastically well.
Right.
Correct. So you have to experiment a lot with people.
Very interesting.
Because people are unique.
Right.
They themselves will not know what they can achieve.
Very interesting.
I think it's up to the leader
right.
to really, I think, spend so much quality time
right.
really observing each and every action of an individual.
Right.
And then figuring out what's the right career roadmap.
Sure.
Where the role of coaching becomes super important. Otherwise, I think if you are trying to take a delegatory approach, where you're trying to get a marketing expert and assuming things will happen,
right.
I think that's an old school of thought.
Right.
The new school of thought, I feel, is like really building leaders for future.
Right.
No, I invest a lot of my time there.
I think that's a very interesting point that I've highlighted, and I think that also is a reflection of how you are leading your team, right? I think it's a huge reflection on your style of management, right? And I think I kind of agree with you. I think that in today's time, you need a leader who is easy to access, who's easy to sort of speak with, who can help you navigate, who can help you take those risks without necessarily the pressure of say losing your job or say not performing or whatever, right? And like you said, I think those are some very, very important bits and pieces that need to be have to be sort of at a design level, right? Where you're trying to build a team of rock stars, right? Then I'm going to take a step back, right? When you hire, what are some of the things that you look for, right? What are some of the key say traits or characteristics that you look for, right? So I mean, of course, we understand pedigree is one important piece, right? But there are many other things that talk about an individual, right? There are a lot of softer aspects that talk about an individual, right? What do you look for? I mean, tell me a little more about it.
Okay, so I will first of all say that my personal journey as a hiring manager,
right,
has been very interesting. I used to think like 4 years back that I can hire the best, but I was absolutely wrong. It was a hard learning for me.
Right.
I realized with time that when you are hiring, first of all, you have a lot of biases.
Okay.
Sometimes you may have and typically the biases are what you don't have.
Right.
And if you see that in the other person, you will say the guy is really strong.
Right.
I'm just trying to hint you on what could be the biases.
Sure.
Suppose you're trying to build an electronics business, example.
Right.
And you don't have an electronics background, and somebody comes who says he knows it all, right? You will get impressed.
Right.
So first of all, I think it's very important to be aware.
Right.
While you are hiring, you should remove all your personal biases out.
Right. Right.
Focus should be on understanding the person journey so far. And it can't be like a superficial conversation. You have to understand the guy. If you want to really understand whether the guy is hungry, you cannot ask me, are you hungry? You have to really go deep into stories of a person, right? You have to understand what the struggle the guy has gone through. Maybe some guys I have seen who had very tough times in their families. Okay, they lost some dear ones, or maybe some incident where maybe some, like I remember some people I hired who lost their jobs in the journey.
Sure. Sure.
But they had the grit to really come back.
Right.
Now that's a trait which is rare in this generation.
Right.
This may be a bit debatable, but the new generation is a bit soft.
Right.
Because I think we are living in a world which is of abundance.
Right.
People don't need to struggle that much.
Sure.
So it's very important, I think, to figure out what struggle the guy has gone through, how many
Right.
failures the guy has gone through,
Sure.
and what is the learning mindset of the guy. What the guy has done in the last 1 year to really upskill himself or herself.
Right.
I think if you get the right answers there, and it's important never to look for polished jewels.
Right.
I think it's very important to find the raw jewels which you can polish.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Nitin, my other point is, right, how critical is observation, right? So how do you believe that, when you're hiring, right, or when you're creating a crack team, right, it is important that every single person who is part of that team, right, comes in with a certain sense of observation, right? And how important do you think that is as a as a trait? It's very important, and that is something which could significantly help the alignments on the ground. What are your thoughts about that?
So first of all, there is always a starting point,
Sure.
Ashu.
Yeah.
Whenever you hire a person,
Sure.
you will never hire a perfect person, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should be conscious what the strengths are and what
Right.
are the development areas. Let's
Sure.
not call it weakness. Let's call it everybody can improve.
Right.
That becomes like a balance sheet view of when you are hiring a person.
Sure.
Now, as a leader, your focus should be on improving that chart.
Right.
Keep having your observations over every month, every
Right.
quarter.
Right.
And see the graph of the guy.
Mm-hmm.
You will be astonished if you really don't wait for the appraisal cycles, first of all. This is
Right.
an ongoing thing. You're going through that grind every day.
Right.
You talk a lot. You spend a lot of time. You have long hours of meetings, right?
Right. Right.
Keep noting your observations. Correct? Have a repository.
Sure.
In that, you will find some guys are really improving. Invest even more time with those guys.
Right.
In that, you will find which guys can do what.
Mm-hmm.
And as I told you before, you experiment. I think use it like a playground. Your team should be like, I think you have to experiment again. I'm saying experiment a
Sure.
lot to figure out what's going to work. You will be absolutely surprised. Maybe after
Right.
6 months, something is
Right.
happening which you never expected. And
Right.
the point is, you need to be humble in this journey. You need to be very transparent with people.
Right.
You have to share those observations with people also.
Right. Right.
And they will not mind. Ashu, you may think if I tell a guy, yaar, you don't know how to communicate.
For
Okay,
example.
you don't know how to talk to a customer.
Yeah. Right.
But if you give the feedback the right way
Mm-hmm.
and give the observation with examples
Right.
and facts,
Mm-hmm.
the guy will improve. I think the problem is we all get so stuck in a startup world.
Mm-hmm.
We get so lost that we are not spending that time and not polishing those hidden raw jewels.
Interesting. Nitin, when you're doing that, I mean, and what I hear what you say, right? It's possible, and in my mind, I'm just kind of visualizing this entire thing that you've sort of taken us through, right? I mean, if it's a 15-member team, 20-member team, 30-member team, it's easy to sort of do all of these things, right? You can build one of those, one-on-one rappers, those equations. You can bring in the people on a collaborative bench. You can do like a variety of things, right? Because it's a small set of people that you have to sort of handle, right? And you can know them at a much deeper level, right?
Correct.
And I think that also sort of gives you an opportunity to mentor them and help them learn and come up the curve and all of that, right? Where it gets difficult is when you have to do it at a larger team, right? I mean, you manage a very large team right now at White Hat Junior, right? I mean, you're doing 200 plus people right now, maybe more, right? I mean, you're in the process of hiring many more people, right? So your team is going to be much swelled up from where you are currently, right? How do you ensure that this is something that can institutionalize at a company level, at an organizational level? How do you take care of that?
So I think there are different steps on this, Ashu. The first step is building rocking the first like 12 members or 20 members in the team.
Right.
You have to build a culture, and the leader has to be the absolutely clear on what culture are you trying to build.
Sure. Okay.
The culture can be, obviously the core is performance.
Right.
Some leaders would like to create a culture of a family, like
right.
It's absolutely open. You spend a lot of time. Some leaders are like more high on EQ.
Right.
So they try to build a culture of more on EQ. Sure. Some will be more on, so certain nuances can change in a culture, but the core culture is what you need to build, because leader will bring certain values.
Right.
And there is a culture you're trying to build for a startup.
Sure.
So every culture will be different in different startup, first of all.
Interesting.
Correct. Right. The first 20 people, if you build it well, and you hire the next set of people, correct?
Right.
They become your cultural ambassadors, first of all, number one.
Interesting. Okay.
Number two, spend enough and more time with those 20 people to find 5 leaders.
Okay.
Because if your first like X team,
right,
20-25% of the team should become leaders. If they are not becoming, there is a problem. Either your hiring was wrong,
right,
or you didn't give the right inputs to build those leaders.
Okay.
The combination of both.
Okay.
Okay. So you build leaders who are connected with you on the culture you want to build.
Okay.
And they build their teams then. Correct?
Interesting. Okay.
So I think as a leader, you should be spending a lot of time with your N-1 and N-2.
Right.
Which is a good, I think, effective span of control, which any leader can do if their will is. So let's assume the span of control is 6. So obviously, if you are very well bonded with your 6 direct reportees,
right,
but then you are also bonded with the next 36.
Right.
You should spend enough and more time with them, but obviously one-on-one conversations are not possible.
Okay.
So you need to create events in which all these people get together and you discuss, brainstorm, so that they are connected with the vision.
Right.
Correct? And I think if that layer of N-2, which I call the trunk of the organization,
right,
the middle of India, or any middle of any organization, any country or anything. I think if that is connected with the culture, the front warriors, which is the field staff on the ground,
right,
will get that cultural cascade automatically. But those, I think, 40 people have to be connected with the vision and the leader. Otherwise, this will fail miserably, because you will grow, you will become an organization of 2,000 people, and then you will find the litmus test, Ashu, is what is your last guy talking in the organization?
I agree.
Is the guy bitching about you?
Right.
Is the guy saying, I really love working here? It's all about, I think, being connected.
Right.
Keep talking to few people.
Sure.
Keep checking what's the tone of the organization.
Right.
Which will tell you there is a problem.
Interesting.
Correct. And you don't need to talk to 100 people. You can have a habit of spending like 5 minutes just talking to somebody. Okay. And then it's like an engine. Culture is an engine. Right. It's not a one-time affair.
Right.
Correct. So you will find, if you do a sloppy job for 2 months, suppose you go on a chutti. Right. Correct. Or maybe sometimes leaders get lazy.
Absolutely.
So they are like not connected with the ground.
Right.
It's important to be connected, but sometimes you lose control.
Right.
You will find some misses. I think some politics will start coming.
Right.
I think it's important to nail it at the butt.
Interesting.
When you understand there is a problem,
right,
leave your business, because business is just an output.
Right.
Get the culture right, and then the business anyways will keep coming. So I think you don't need to focus on business much. If your team is connected, you can be very peaceful while you are working.
Very interesting. I think Nitin, I think that's a the step-by-step breakdown of how one should sort of do this, and how possibly you're doing it in your organization, right? Is a good reflection of how can you cultivate that culture, right? And I think really sort of take it to the last level and last layer of your team, right? I think it's a fair perspective, right? Nitin, more often than not, I found one very large sort of a problem, right? Is to build that culture, like you highlighted, right? Because there are people who are coming from all across the space. The priorities are different, the stories are different, the narrative is different, the background is different, right? To bring everybody on a common ground to sort of and to sort of build that sense of urgency. I found it to be very, very difficult, right? Because not, and I think that's one reason of that is one primary reason of a lot of failure that we see, right, across, say, organizations, teams, be it in sales, be it in the operations, be it in other aspects, right? What are your thoughts about it? I mean, how do you sort of think that organizations can do this right, where you can bring in each stakeholder on the same ground, right, to achieve those those targets that you sort of set out, right, the goals that you've set out that need to be achieved.
Correct. I'll say there are two dimensions to look at.
Sure.
One is, which I already mentioned, is
Right.
connecting with the purpose and the vision. You
Sure.
need to have a strong purpose. People should
Right.
be connected with the purpose.
Sure.
Because if it is more purposeful, the energy will not get drained. They
Right.
may see short problems, some things coming, strategies also changing on the journey, but they know the goal.
Right.
If they know the goal, they'll say these are like small speed breakers or some patchy
Sure.
things, right? I'll give an example of army.
Yes, please.
If there is a battalion ka head hai, right? So the team is connected because they're working for the nation. I think there cannot be anything more purposeful than really serving your country.
I think it's easier there. It's difficult in your job.
No. So let me, why these guys, why the army personals?
Right.
Whatever comes, suddenly they'll come to here. There is some issue happening in Kashmir, and
Sure.
people have to rush there.
Sure.
Will they think twice that they have to go there and they
Right.
have to leave their families? Will they think or not? Tell me, Ashok. They will go or not?
They will.
Correct? Because there is a purpose.
Absolutely.
The thing is, if the team is connected with a deep purpose, it cannot be a superficial purpose. They should feel that they are contributing
Right.
in certain way. The agenda can be anything.
Right.
Like in the current organization, we are really solving for education for kids in the country.
Sure.
Every person in the team
Right.
is connected with that vision. And in our small ways, we are contributing to that vision. This looks simple on a piece of paper, but really, if the leader and the N-1 and N-2 are connected with that vision,
right,
there is no problem. Okay, it will be an easy one. This is first dimension. The second dimension is ultimately we are humans, right? Why anybody? Okay, they will connect with the purpose, but everybody looks for what is there in for him or her.
Absolutely.
Where comes whether the individual is growing in your team.
Right.
And there are two aspects to this, Ashu. One is your promotions. You are a manager, you become a senior manager, you become a director, you become a VP.
Right.
But I think more than that, what I've seen, if there is a great culture and if individuals are growing personally,
right,
they're going to the next level. They feel they are better salespeople, they are better ops people.
Right.
They're doing better. And they go and there is a high trust in the organization that if I do well, I will be rewarded with no insecurity, no fear, so that the guys focus on the job.
Right.
So anything comes, whether you change your strategy, whether you say my metric has changed from X to Y.
Right.
And if the team is not connected, they'll say, yeah, these guys don't know what they're doing. If the team is connected with the vision, they'll say, this is okay. I think this tweak is there, and they trust their leaders. They'll say, I think if they're doing it, there must be a logic.
Right.
So let's follow certain things. Okay. At the same time, you make the team part of the creation process.
Right.
So that multiple dimension, but I am just picking two right now,
Sure.
which is connecting with the purpose and the vision. And second is really caring for their career progression.
Right.
Yeah. So
Nitin, there are two very interesting points that you highlighted, right? In fact, this was part of the questions that I had for the session, right? One where you highlight fear and security, right? And I think that's a very big aspect in a working professional's career, right? Or in his life, right? Second that you highlighted is around empowerment, right? Again, which is something which is very, very important, right? I'll actually start with fear, right? Do you think fear is a good accelerator? Do you think it's a good motivator? I mean, motivation, of course, is something that you do in a different way, right? But a certain sense of fear, make sure that the best in people come out faster. Do you agree with that? I mean, there's a complete, a thesis around this particular piece, right? That when you push people, out of their comfort zone, the result could be absolutely phenomenal, right? And I'm sure you would have experienced this as a leader in your capacity. But what is also important to understand is this something which is short-lived, right? Or is this something which can go on to change the individual forever, right? What are your thoughts about this?
So there is a marginal utility curve, Ashu.
Right.
If you give a certain stress, I
Sure.
forgot the name of the curve, the guy who invented that. But the curve is the more stress you give, till a certain point, it gives you better output.
Sure.
But if you cross that point, that's the breaking point.
Right.
It's very important. Rather, I will say stretching the team is the most important input a leader can give.
Right.
Because if you're not stretching the team, they will not push themselves to learn.
Sure.
They will not push themselves to deliver big results. Then only they can grow, right? So you have to push the boundaries, but at the same time, you have to give the freedom. So let me call it, it's like controlled empowerment.
Right.
Till the time you are confident, the guy can fly. Till the time the guy's like, if a kid is crawling, you will support, right? The kids start walking, then okay, the kids start learning cycling. You will watch it, right? But when the kid becomes an adult, largely you leave the guy.
Right.
Then the parents are there to tell something grossly wrong happening. Then you, so I think you have to create guys who become adults.
Right.
You have to create adults,
Sure.
which are great leaders. Correct. So in that there is a hand holding, but you have to stretch.
Right.
Right. For example, I remember like my kid used to loves reading.
Right.
So I used to stretch him. Why don't you read more books?
Right.
And with time, now he can read like Harry Potter in like 2 days.
Wow.
That kind of a book, because he built that. He built that muscle.
Sure.
You have to push people to get to a point, and then you leave them. Right. Let them fly. But that's your responsibility to get them to a point they can fly.
But the important part is, does fear work, right? I mean, does fear work when you're creating a team, right? Because otherwise what happens is that typically people tend to operate in a very comfortable environment, like I mentioned, right? Nobody wants to come out of it, right? And I think the earlier point that you highlighted, right, that we are in an environment of abundance, right? And when you have abundance, right, there is no necessary reason for you to say step up your game and become a bigger contributor, right? So do you think I don't know if it's a fair question or not, but have you used, for example, fear in your methodology of of leadership, of trying to achieve, say, your targets, your goals, and possibly institutionalizing it, right? Saying that, listen, this is not something which is happening, but we need to factor this in, right? This kid, we've helped him grow up, but the kid is not coming to curve. Does he has the potential? Yes. Is he performing? No, right? And thus comes a play where you say that we need to institutionalize this change possibly, or this at least attempt, right, in terms of how the output is going. Do you kind of accept that? Do you think it is a it's a fair play there?
So, Ashu, let me answer it this way.
Right.
You should look at two things in any individual while you're building the business. One is the will and the skill.
Sure.
right? So this is a very popular term used in the sales.
Right.
The will of the guy has to be good. The
Right.
guy can become scalable, but in the journey, you will always find rotten eggs.
Right.
It's very important to figure out who are the rotten eggs and
Right.
where you should not be investing that much time. You should
Sure.
try to a certain level. Obviously,
Right.
you empower everyone, but it's like every person in your team is an asset.
Right.
If you don't take that lens and you hire people for that, for example, you need 50 salespeople
Sure.
to build out something.
Sure.
Every individual has to be looked at differently. Correct? There is a journey, and somewhere you empower, somewhere you don't empower, and then you apply the principle of situational leadership.
Right.
I'm sure you know that, right? Which is
Yeah.
D1, D2, D3, D4s.
Right.
You have to segment your team.
Mm-hmm.
Who are your D3s? D3s
Right.
are the guys who have the capability but are not motivated. Their
Sure.
will is a problem.
Right.
Either you solve their will. If they are like really stubborn and they're spoiling the culture, you take action. You have to be very, very, I think, strong, Ashu, on certain things, and somewhere you grow your D4s,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is guys who are super motivated and they have the capability to perform.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no straight answer to your question, Ashu. I'm just trying to give you certain dimension.
No, I know, Nitin. I think it's a very difficult one, and I know when you say that, I understand. As a leader, you don't want to be. I mean, at the end of the day, none of us are bad human beings, right? It's just that we need to follow certain things, right? But I think also, Nitin, with what you answered, right? I think what is also visible is that there is a certain responsibility of the process, right? That needs to be put in place, right? If typically what happens is if the process, for example, is set out where people are not, for example, heard back, right? And it's very hard coded and and very rigid, right? Typically, what happens is that's when the falling out happens more, right?
Correct.
But if you have a structure which is where people can come back, give a feedback, which is communicative, right? Which is dynamic, where you're engaging with your team members a little more often, right? The possibility of creating undue, say, pressure or fear in the teams might be reduced, right? And which is not a very healthy thing anyway, right? But on and off, like you said, right? You need to use it, right? So that people start to understand their own potentials, and they can possibly the D3s can become the D2s and possibly the D1s eventually, right? I think you highlighted a very important point, which was around empowerment, right? And I think we've not, we've casually sort of mentioned it, right? But empowerment is something which is very, very important, right? In your style of leadership, or when you're creating a growth team, a high growth team, right? How important is empowerment, right? Empowerment also is a manifestation of trust, right? In people who are working with you, right? That we trust you, we empower you to do certain things, right? And there is a certain reassurance that they get about their own capabilities and their association with the organization, right? Something that you also kind of highlighted across your answers, right? How important do you think is empowerment, right? And still, what level can you go when you say empower a certain set of people, and how do you do that in large when you are working with a large team? What are your thoughts about that?
So Ashu, it's very difficult to empower people, let me first tell you.
Yeah.
Because if you are
right,
like you're the captain of the ship,
sure,
you will not take risks to give the control to
right,
somebody, because the ship can sink.
sure.
But at the same time, try to understand, startups are built with a lot of risk.
Right.
Only if you know the numbers better than me, right?
Sure.
Maybe less than 5% of the startups are successful, or maybe 1% are super successful.
Right.
Because they took risk in their journey.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to apply the same concept in people leadership.
Right.
You have to take risks.
Mm-hmm.
You will empower people. Some will perform, some will not.
Right.
But the probability, if you don't do that versus you doing it,
right,
the expected outcome is you will get more empowered leaders who are real owners of running your business.
Right.
You have to always think of an org structure that if you are not there after 2 years,
right,
and you go on a holiday, the business should run.
Sure.
I think if that philosophy is not there deep down, you will never do it. You will always try to control things in your territory.
Right.
Because you want to be the king of the territory.
Right.
You want to be the lion of the jungle, right?
Right.
But you
Right.
have to create more lions, maybe of different territories.
Right.
Some will be operations, some will be sales, some will be
Sure.
international business.
Right.
You have to create more lions, right? And it can only happen, there is no rocket science, is by empowering people.
Right.
I think it's all about letting go and letting go at the right time.
Sure.
You cannot let go when you are building like a big business and suppose there is a very strategic project, example, Ashu.
Sure.
You will never take a risk to put your any XYZ person on that project. But you will know those kind of projects will also come after 6 months.
Right.
Prep those people, use those 6 months to experiment.
Right.
Correct? Empower them. Some will work, some will not work.
Interesting.
But if you don't do it, what will happen is you will build an organization which will depend on one person to run the show.
Right.
Which will fail after 2 years or 3 years till if you are not at the helm of the organization. Because that's how if you see all the best companies globally who have like lakhs of people,
right,
great culture. There is a process. Now you asked about the process, Ashu.
Yeah.
The process is simple. First of all, there have to be a lot of micro nano goals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the time span for that is a week.
Right.
There has to be a weekly process where there is a input output equation for people.
Right.
What you did last week,
mm-hmm.
how the numbers went by,
right,
and what are the goals for the next week, and what are the feedbacks for you.
Right.
If rather than doing like a half yearly cycle, Ashu,
mm-hmm.
if there can be small micro weekly things where you give a project to a person on Monday,
right,
let the guy work on that till Friday.
Sure.
And let the guy present on Monday. Okay? You give that opportunity to the guy. Let him present to you because you are not throwing the guy in the ocean.
Sure.
Maybe you're throwing in like a 3 feet pool.
Right.
Correct? But you have to throw in. So empowerment doesn't stop with throwing the guy in the ocean.
Sure.
It's a journey. So if we do it in a very structured, step-by-step way,
right,
with small milestones, it is a very enriching journey. You will enjoy it. You will see guys who were not capable to do something.
Right.
Certainly you'll see they are your rock stars. But it will happen in those 52 weeks.
Right.
How you can persevere that philosophy, what I'm talking about, for 52 weeks or maybe 26 weeks, then you can create magic at the end of it then.
I think what you also sort of, when you say what you say, I also hear you saying implicitly that, you are also sort of building a very, very different kind of a bond, right? When you give them, when you kind of, give them these tasks, when you empower them, right, to come in and be part of something, right? And I think they feel a sense of belongingness, which essentially means that this is something, the relationship is going to be different, right? There's a very different kind of onus and responsibility, and and the navigation that is going to have right, and these are champions that you're creating in the process, right? So there's very soft. This is possibly a very soft way of creating those champions in the process, right? Also identifying the ones which view this as an opportunity, right? And I think it's such an organic process that you highlighted, and I think that's absolutely fantastic, right? I agree. There's one critical problem that is out there, right? As soon as you start talking about a high growth environment, right, is everybody is looking for those champions, right, across the board. Okay, and a lot of these guys have many options, right? You've been there yourself, right? Organizations are looking for people who can come in and perform in a pressure zone, can perform where they can actually look at scale, understand scale much beyond what, for example, say a traditional organization, right? And these are far and few. Okay.
Correct.
How do you create a winning compensation model, right? How do you ensure that they are aligned to you for the longest time? Because people risk is a massive risk when it comes to building a business, right? Especially in a startup environment, because your aim is 10x growth, right? What you are calibrating for is a 10x growth, at least a bare minimum, right? In terms of the numbers, in terms of your engagement, pretty much everything, right? In terms of your acquisition. How do you ensure that there is a winning competition model that is created, for these people? Uh, what are some of those hacks around this particular thing?
So, Ashu, I think money is not the prime motivator for most of the people.
Okay.
That's my observation.
Okay.
But obviously money is important.
Sure.
People will leave jobs. Let's assume you get a 2x package.
Right.
And the current company cannot offer that.
Right.
And you have a journey in which you take that leap.
Right.
I think those opportunities individuals should lap. But
Right.
typically, if you're changing jobs, the percentage growth you get is something, if you do well in a startup, you will get that. Correct? Sure. I think you have to there has to be that trust that as I told before, if I perform well, I will be compensated well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Even if you give 10% less than what the industry offers, right, and you have a great culture where people are heard, and as you said, like there is a bonding,
right,
they will never leave for 10% or 20%. I can bet you on this. 95% people will not leave.
Okay.
It is, I think we have made it transactional.
Right.
People are not transactional. People are humans.
Right.
Emotions. Right. If they feel connected, money will not attract them.
Okay.
Right? If you can help them fly, right, they will never leave you because they know, they trust the environment. They will continue to do that. There will always be a guy who will run for money. You cannot do anything about those people.
Right.
But it's better day one, you connect them with the organization again, that money doesn't come at the top of their mind. Right? So it's not that I'm against that. I always ensure my top performers are compensated well.
Sure.
This is my top priority because I don't want to lose even one guy because of money.
Right.
I have lost people because some people wanted to do like higher education.
Sure.
Some people wanted to move into a different kind of an industry because of certain reason.
Right.
Because they're passionate about certain things.
Sure.
I never try to convince them that you stay back in my team.
Sure.
I think you have to be very selfless with people, right? You have to understand what are their goals and never put your goals in their journey, first of all.
But Nitin, tell me this, right? So tell me this, right? What you're talking about is internal, right? It's about retaining talent in an organization, right? But as an organization, your requirements keep changing, right? I think your targets keep changing, your goals keep changing, right? You keep evolving, okay? Which essentially means that you'll have to build a lot of capacity as well, which essentially means that you'll have to bring in a lot of people from the outside, right? Now, my sense is, and I could be wrong, right? The perfect way to show a lot of love is to a Tiffany's. That's what we've heard, right? If you're quoting somebody, okay. Unless they are within that, unless they are within that system, right? I mean, when they're in the system, there are a lot of other things that you can showcase. I think that, we empower you, we kind of, you're part of the process. There's a cultural thing that you can demonstrate and showcase, right? But when they're on the outside, money is important, right? Or having a long-term value creation, let me put it this way, is important, right? What are your thoughts about that? I mean, that plays an important role for you to onboard a lot of interesting people. They could be in form of, say, ESOPs, they could be in form of, say, other incentives, right? Which could build that relationship. What are your thoughts about that? Or is there also a metric of hiring good people, saying that, listen, this is a person who's possibly choosing an association where he or she wants to be associated with the organization for a longer term, right? What are your what do you have to say about that, right? When you are quoting people from the outside to come inside?
I think it's very important to understand why the guy wants to join your organization.
Sure.
You will find guys in the journey,
sure,
who wants to join because they want a rise in their career. They want a 50% hike.
Sure.
there is no problem. Rather, I love those people.
Right.
People who say, I want to go 5x on my comp
Right.
in the next 3 years. I actually prefer hiring them. That's
Right.
my personal bias. I think that works for me. Okay.
Right.
I think you have to show the roadmap.
Right.
How can you become a vice president, for example?
Right.
3 years.
Right.
You have to convince people, and not at a shallow level.
Right.
Tell them stories,
Right.
examples, real examples. And if you have those, so it's like a वो चक्का चलाने वाली बात है. So you have
Right.
to get to a point,
Right.
you have examples, then it's a snowball effect. So you are able to attract talent because, Ashu, anybody joining any company will do reference check.
Right.
They will check whether what these guys are saying makes sense.
Right.
Are people really growing? Are they learning? And if they find that, I
Right.
don't think money is going to be a main point.
Sure.
I don't think I have hired like the best of my leaders till now in my career
Right.
by throwing money. That's not been my experience.
Right.
At least. But at the same time, people are growing. I think you add ESOPs, you add very, very strong variables.
Right.
Like a good percentage of like the business you get this much compensation,
Right.
so that they are motivated, right? Rather, before they coming to you, I normally talk with my team.
Right.
And your compensation, I think, is low.
Right.
You have a potential to get to 50.
Sure.
This is what you need to do to get to 50.
Right.
Correct. And don't worry whether you stay with me,
Sure.
or you go outside.
Right.
I'm worried that you get to that number. Correct. So if you have that genuine intent,
right,
and a roadmap, I don't think people need more than that.
Interesting. And I think what you're also highlighting is that, offer a culture. I think offer a culture,
Offer
right?
culture.
Offer culture, right? And I think money is a subset of that, right? It is important set, but it cannot be the entire thing. I mean, you can't build a transactional relationship. And I think I kind of understand where you're coming from, because if you're building a transactional relationship, I think, but in that case, there is a different kind of, there possibly is going to be a very different kind of a relationship, right? It will possibly be a very very transactional relationship, very shallow relationship, very output driven relationship, right? Which is not necessarily very healthy, either for the organization or for the individual, right? I think the toxicity in that relationship is going to be very different, right? So I think thus it becomes important that you offer a well packaged cultural proposition, right? Where there is, of course, there is money, there is value creation which happens, there is cultural aspects to it, there is empowerment, there is trust, and the person is part of the process, right? And I think that's a better way to sort of look at it, right? It's a holistic way to look at it, where you actually sort of kind of sieving champions right at the start. And I think I kind of like that point of view. I think that is something which a lot of people can carry in it. Nitin, 2020 has been a very unreal year for all of us, right? When you're talking about high-powered teams and stuff like that, right? Traditionally, and I'm sure this is something that you also experienced as a professional, right? When you're in an office setting, things are very different, right? When you are in a setting which is essentially at home, something that we've been experiencing for last little over a year now. Has your philosophy changed, right? In terms of keeping the teams motivated, having them on the focus on the goal, on the ball constantly, right? What are some of the things that have changed, right? In your say, according to you, in ensuring that everybody is motivated and at it during these times. When I get to meet people personally, there's a very different kind of excitement, there's a very different kind of motivation, right? But when everybody is working as a distributed workforce, it adds to a layer of complexity, right? What are your thoughts about that?
So, Ashu, the headline there is, if done well, work from home and an online kind of a format can be very, very effective.
Right.
Obviously, there were initial hiccups.
Right.
But I think it's much more peaceful.
Right.
Because you are there with your family all the time, right? You can have your lunch with your family.
Right.
You can have breakfast, right? You can wake up early, do your first huddle in the morning, and then have your breakfast. I do that.
Right.
Correct. So you get a lot of flexibility working from home.
Right.
There is an advantage, correct? Uh, but the con is when you're hiring online, con rather the challenge, let me put it this way. When you hire people who have never seen you, 90% of my team currently,
Right.
98% of my team,
My
I
God.
have not met in person.
Okay.
And they are in like at least 15 states in the country.
Right.
Uh, now the problem statement there, as you asked,
Right.
how you ensure, right, they are connected. Whatever we spoke till now, right? It's very difficult to do it in an online format.
Absolutely.
I think the key there is only one. If I have to put only one, right, is communicate and over communicate.
Right.
Have daily huddles.
Mm-hmm.
It can be 30 minutes, it can be 45 minutes,
Right.
where you discuss what are the goals, have like ideally meetings with videos on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are very comfortable. We do a lot of parties online. So
Right.
I
Wow.
remember like end of last year, we did an Indian Idol.
Right.
We call it B2B Indian Idol, where
Interesting.
people came and sang songs and all.
Right.
Recently, we did a function where we called all the family members of the team.
Wonderful.
And we engaged only with family members.
Right.
I'm just giving example of few practices you may like to do to engage.
Sure.
I think online is equally powerful as physical. Obviously, we were discussing this and we asked this question to all families in that,
Right.
I think last get together we did,
Right.
what do you prefer?
Right.
Working from home, working from office? I think the answer which a lot of people gave was, this is fantastic, but
Right.
we would like to meet in person.
Right.
There is a physical connect, which is very important, Ashu.
Right. Right.
But that's not 100%.
Right.
I think the ideal and very effective model is like a 90-10 model.
Right.
Rather 80-20 is a better model, where it's
Right.
like one day in a week you meet in person and remaining days you can do your online. Rather your huddle can be the weekly planning, which I said, like weekly
Right.
engine you have to run. That
Right.
can be one physical thing. Rest, I think if people know what they want to do, what are their goals,
Right.
online is the best format according to me. Obviously,
Right.
it depends on the role you are doing. If you are like a core sales guy, you have to hit the ground.
Sure.
Then it's slightly different. But if
Right.
it is like a desk kind of a role, online 80% and 20% offline.
Right.
Is, I think, may become like the gold standard in coming times.
Right. Very interesting. Nitin, I have continued to ask you about, great teams and, what it takes to build great teams and so on and so forth, right? And I think across all of your answers, there was a part of you which was visible, right? And the way you look at things, and I think that is, I think so there are certain things that are very cool about it, right? There are certain things that are very, there is a certain very approachable, friendly facade that you sort of have, right? Or you possibly created, right? For people to come in and sort of engage and giving that comfort, which is so much more important, right? Do you think leadership post 2020, what we've been through, right, is going to go through a huge transition, right? We are in for a very different kind of relationship. While there's an expectation that we have from, say, the people who are working with us, right, in terms of their alignment, in terms of their, thought processes, in terms of their ability to contribute and stuff like that, right? The leader of, beyond 2020 or beyond, say, the COVID world that we've kind of experienced, right, will have to change, right? Will have to be that friend and a motivator and a navigator and a coach rather than being a boss. Do you agree with that?
I think there is a new definition of leadership which is coming, Ashu. I think one dimension is you have to act like an enabler.
Right.
You have to be the guy who can join the dots.
Sure.
Where the width and depth of the business understanding is very important. I think gone are those days where you are maybe just a great people guy,
right,
or you know your job well.
Right.
You have to be a master of many.
Right.
Gone are those days, those cozy days. I think you have to be very grounded.
Right.
I think the need is of egoless leadership. I think somebody coined this term a few years back. I remember. It's called servant leadership,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
and which means is you're serving people,
Right.
right? Uh, you are an enabler, as I said, right?
Right.
You're trying to create an ecosystem. Your job is to create a culture,
Right.
correct? That's the role of a leader. At the same time, you should know the ground insights, what's happening in the market.
Absolutely.
Then only you can build a business. Because if
Right.
you are a great people leader, but you're not hands-on, you will not fly.
Right.
I think you need the art and the science, if I have to put it.
Right.
Both. You have to be a master. Then only you can build long-term sustainable businesses.
Very interesting. Nitin, you're possibly two or three tips, advices to a lot of managers and leaders that are out there, right? That you think has become very, very critical, and that they should sort of follow, right? To ensure there is consistency, that there is a right culture, and the teams are geared to achieve, goals that are set out, right? And also ensuring that you're not constantly in a firefight mode where you're trying to retain talent and stuff like that, right? And institutionalize some of those differences, right? So, what are your top two or three advices?
I think, first of all, whatever you're doing,
Right.
you have to do it with full conviction and passion. If you don't love your role,
Right.
don't do it. Better change your role, or maybe go to some other culture.
Right.
But if you're not enjoying, don't waste your time. Okay, so you should be connected with the people there, right?
Mhm.
That's number one. Number two is, if you have taken a plunge, especially if you're in a high growing setup,
Right.
be ready with multiple struggles which will come your way.
Right.
You should embrace failures. If you can't embrace failures, and you want your comfort zones,
Right.
uh, it is going to be a tough ride. Rather,
Right.
it's better to work in traditional setups where the pressure is not much.
Right.
So, if you are so, let me put it this way: if you can step out of your multiple comfort zones,
Right.
then only take this plunge, because this is linked with point number one. Because otherwise, your passion will come down, your energy will come down. So,
Right.
if you don't have that DNA, don't uh, don't think of starting something, or maybe joining like a high growing setup,
Right.
right? And third is, always focus on fundamentals. Always find the truth.
Right.
And the truth is never easily available.
Right.
The truth is deep, uh, and it can only happen if you can hit the ground running.
Right.
Right. So get those right deep insights, because that will accelerate your growth rather than doing a lot of hard work. Insights are more powerful than putting energy.
Interesting. Nitin, it was a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I think this was a how I want this conversation to go on, right? I think teams are the only constant, right? This is something which is, I think visible across all. I mean, I think one thing which is common across all high growth businesses, right, or even businesses at the inception level, right, is how they are able to attract right talent, how they're able to retain right talent, and I think having that as a constant helps them solve better, design for future. And I think even while we've had disruptions like what we had, and last 1 year has been an example of that, right? You still can perform consistently, right? So I think human asset and human capital is the most important, and I think some of the points that you highlighted, Nathan, are absolutely relevant, right? And I think what is also a reflection of what you said, right? And I can, that's an undertone of your entire sort of the conversation that you had, is be empathetic, right? It's not as if you're going to put the responsibility on the people and the people are going to drive the business for you. But I think you'll have to be a very collaborative leader while you're building, right? And knowing them at a personal level, having that degree of connect, I think is going to be so much more important, irrespective of how large the team you have, right? And that possibly will help these people to come on the same plane and plateau, and and kind of buy into your vision, right, and eventually contribute. And that is only possible when you let your guards down and you engage with them at a more empathetic level, more personal level. Nitin, with that, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
Yeah. I enjoyed the whole conversation, Ashu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nitin. Bye.